Absolutely.
Like
For
every
sure.
dollar counts for people who have nothing.
Right.
Nothing.
Right. And we saw with Helene people coming out to support Western North
in
Carolina
droves.
and the efforts
Yeah.
there. It is our turn to step up. So let's do it, folks. Texas Flood Relief. Let's help support our friends and people we know. We know a lot of Texans out there in Central Texas, or people who know people. This affects everybody.
Sorry, just to jump in here. We were kind of talking about the increase of the river levels, and I did some research actually last time I left the Impact Studio last time, and it was at 2:55 that actually the closest site, because there's a bunch of different river monitors along multiple rivers across the United States, but the Guadalupe River at Hunt on July 4th at 2:55 was 9.4 feet. It went up to 37.5 feet at 5:10, and like how fast this rose is just absolutely astronomical. So let's talk about it. You actually had your first flash flood warning around 1 a.m. in this area because active rain was happening. So the river was rising. But the problem is, this is an exponential rise. If you remember anything from whatever class you took that talked about exponential increase in graphs and everything, it doesn't get as steep as this, because literally you're talking about in a 30-minute time frame a 5-foot rise. And I was physically looking at the topography around here where we had Camp Mystic. There's literally cabins just a walking distance away from the river. And what really makes this interesting is this is the Guadalupe River. And we keep on saying Guadalupe, but this is actually the South Fork of the Guadalupe River that is kind of cuts through right next to the camp. And what that means is you have a branch that comes off this main roaring river. So whenever you have the big time rains that are rushing down that, it flows through these smaller branches and tributaries at a rapid rate. And that's exactly what came here, where at 4:25 it was up to 26 feet. And here, just forgive me, Jane.
Sure.
I actually want to bring up the verbiage here, because each river monitor across the United States is going to have some sort of reading that is associated with it that will actually talk about like what happens at a certain level, and it's actually astronomical what happens right around 26 feet, and it actually mentions the camp. So here, just for 1 second, there's Guadalupe at Kerrville. Is this one? There's at Hunt. Okay, here it is. All right, so for the full gauge, first off, the one near Kerrville was not a record, but the previous record that was set for this site was set back in 1932. It was 36 feet, so 37 beat that, so this is significant. But at 25 feet, so major flooding on this. So let me see, that would be probably in between 355 and 425. At this site, and it's about 20 miles south of this, along the South Fork River, that the camps and a lot of the most devastation was. Major flooding severely floods resort camps along the South Fork, below the river in Resort and Hunt. Parts of Highway 39 are flooded, very dangerous, as well as numerous secondary roads. Once you get up to 32 feet, so that's in between or sometime during the 4 o'clock hour, and that's where we're hearing a lot of reports, disastrous, life-threatening flooding, putting water over the roads of the lowest camps and resorts from the headwaters in the north of the South Fork rivers below Comfort. Much of Highway 27 and 39 will flood as a disastrous flood wave moves downstream over the next several hours. So that's also another thing that was happening. Once it reached 32 feet, and it still had 5 more to rise, that this was only increasing downstream. And as more trees and debris was taking up, it was just getting bigger and bigger and a bigger flow of water. And again, as we mentioned, a lot of those camps where we had the most devastation were some of the tributaries in the South Fork River that flood even quicker. The actually Hidden Night campground event that we had back in 2020 was the South Yadkin River, so it's not even the main river. We flood the South Fork River here in Gaston County. That one floods more than anything around the area. It's the forks that are the worst. So it's not just the Guadalupe River, it's the surrounding areas. So since we were talking about that, I just wanted to kind of show some of my findings and read that how amazing this is. And actually that back in 1987, a similar event actually happened, far less, and it's actually known as where I think it was 20 plus people on a bus that a bridge got taken out in the same area. This area is literally known to meteorologists as flash flood alley.
Wow.
So I think it's at this point that things need to be done. There's history of multiple flash flood warnings. It's just never reached this magnitude before, because if you could line every factor for the worst flooding event you can have outside of a tropical system, it's this one. That's also the problem. When it has a name, it has more attention. More people are on standby. The Coast Guard, they're ready to go. This one was just an everyday thunderstorm at night, the right conditions, the right time. There were flood watches in place, but still nobody imagines anything like this.
Flood watch was in place the night before.
It was, and also the flood watch was in the night before for the Hidden Night campground as well. So there are signs with this. There at 1 o'clock, as I showed you with this graphic, there was a flash flood warning for the area. It got upgraded considerable, and then it was emergency during the 4 o'clock. But at that point, when they issue a flash flood emergency, these go in tiers. You're already at over 20 feet, and that's compared to the 8 to 9 that it was at before. So that brings us already up to around major flood stage. But then once you get up to the historical level of this day, that was just taking everything out. So yeah, there were warnings, but there's just certain points that the National Weather Service could have known this was coming. There's going to be people like the grandma in Dante's Peak that doesn't want to go, that says, my river's not going to harm me, this mountain's not going to harm me. So it's always really a tough beast, because there's a lot of social science that comes with this. As a meteorologist, this is the most heartbreaking thing I've ever seen, because you literally see everything that lined up and some factors that led up to this. But there's only so much you can do.
Believe are the factors that made the perfect storm to create an event like this?
You had Barry that moved inland the week prior and then left an impulse of moisture. There's something called P-watts that are precipitable water. So the higher those are, these values were in the 75 percentile. So you're talking about up at that to the 99th percentile. So for one, you had pretty much a column of atmosphere that was ready to go. You had a developing system that was circulating around upper level low, and then you had another system that collided with this, and then it started circling on itself. So you had everything primed. You had recent rains that were starting to swell things. So you have all those factors, and then I was showing you the radar yesterday. Literally, this thing sat in one place, so it rained in the right place to flood the rivers, overwhelm things, and I think it was the right spot of the river that was going to mess with the forks and the tributaries as well. So it's really a week prior that the leftovers from Barry that isn't even a mention in the back of our mind, because it barely did anything. It didn't have the impacts that Sean Tall did, but that just elevated everything. That's why we have a 75 percentile here for moisture, but we don't have the right setup that they had there. So everything was just absolutely perfectly aligned. And as far as the warnings, stuff like that, I don't know how the National Weather Service is handling it. I do know that there were watches and warnings beforehand, but I don't know a guarantee that people were getting those on their phones. I don't know the status of that. Back in the day and earlier in my career, I had a weather radio that I was alerted about these things. But for a flash flood emergency, realistically, you could have gotten the considerable warning and flash flood emergency. Some people might have had no choice in anywhere to go because they were already surrounded. So yeah, it's like, again, I've mentioned this before. We know how many people passed over Helene collectively. Like, I think it was in the 80s here. I can't remember the exact stat. We're talking about over 160 still missing from this. Like, this is astronomical. This is if you look at, I'll even here in a sec. Let's pull up the deadliest disasters that we've had here for the tropics and see how this stacks up. And I guarantee it's probably not going to be anything close to this one. I know I'm repeating myself, but even as a meteorologist, it's like, I can't believe this happened.
No, because there's so many things that we are now learning and we're questioning. And I mean, first you deal with just the heartache and devastation of folks losing their families, so many children, and then you think, what was it with this area, the storm, the river? What does it look like? How does geography factor in? All of that now. I just wanted to know about the human nature part of it now.
Yeah, well, and actually, I think that's the best thing. And I'm sorry for my inaccuracy. I think it was in the 80s for maybe just one state. It was 235 for Helene total. But what are we already up to? 100 and what was the last report?
For 120
120
dead.
So you're talking about
160 plus still missing.
160 still plus
Yes,
missing.
yeah.
So you're talking about still numbers that could rival Helene across multiple states, and you're talking about an isolated area. That's the crazy thing. But no, the social side of things is I get it all the time. And I'm not saying specifically Texas. I don't know what people live along there. These were innocent girls, so that they're eliminated from what I'm about to say. Is that there are a lot of people that think that us meteorologists are out there controlling the weather for our own gain. I literally just
People really think that?
I've had people message me before saying that I'm working for the government, and then Helene was supposed to go one way, but we introduced cloud seeding in order to make this happen.
Oh, yeah.
There is a section of population, I don't know how big it is, and I'm not saying this area specifically, but there are a lot of doubters that don't believe it. Like, some people just don't believe it's not going to happen. Don't worry about it. So that's why it's really tough for some of these warnings, because people aren't going to take it seriously. How many people do you see filming tornadoes when a tornado is outside because you want to get that video?
Right.
There are so many social factors that are coming with weather for self-doubters, for the ones that want to go viral, that almost make it more dangerous in a way. This is just the perfect time of night. People are sleeping. Also, if you look at the map, as we mentioned, there's a bunch of squiggles that along the river and the tributaries. And then once you have those constant bends, well, when you have water that goes into a corner, it's going to overfill it. So it really turns into a lake, and then eventually, once that turns into a lake and things are moving, it turns into a rapidly moving area, and then it almost makes the river 2 to 3 times the width, and that's exactly what happened here. And you can see it in a lot of the damage, but yeah, it just took everything out. This is why flooding is the worst disasters that we have. Now, heat, I know, kills more people overall across the world, but nothing compares to this. You see tornado damage, yes, but that's more isolated. This is just catastrophic.
Sweeping, yes.
It swept everything out. It swept people out. There are people who are gone. One girl that was found was 12 miles away from her campsite.
Oh, my goodness.
Think about that, 12 miles. I don't know, hearing her story, the 12 miles.
Amazing.
Like, for example, I live in Northwest Charlotte. 12 miles away would be going to Jeton Park up in Cornelius. So think about that. Think about going that distance away. It's still unfathomable. It's like going to the state line if you live off of LaSalle and Atondo. Like, it's just absolutely staggering. I'm still bewildered as a meteorologist that this happened to a community like this.
Yeah.
This looks like a hurricane rolled through, but it was just such an isolated event.
Ugh, terrible. Camp Mystic, too, been there for 100 years or so.
Yeah.
And was able to escape so much of earlier problems, issues, flooding, minor flooding.
1987 is the one where that bus incident was, but it was during the day, and they kind of knew that
Yeah,
it
a
was
little bit
coming.
more of a warning.
If this was during the day, because here's the deal, people are awake, they would have saw the river. Oh, this isn't good. Like, and we're talking about another factor that led up to the worst tragedy that we've seen here, and one of the worst as far as flooding events go, at night. Like, that's the final kind of stake. It's just wow. Just wow. And but seeing a lot of the footage and hearing people and seeing the pictures of those who have passed and those that are missing.
It's
like,
beyond surreal, and
yeah.
But
yeah, I know it's a tough term. I know we got super real there, but that's sometimes not what it is.
That's what it is. That's what it is. That's what we're dealing with.
All right. Well, meanwhile, over in Monroe, it's cloudy. That's the best I can do here.
It's all right.
So let's move on.
We
to
are
our
weather alert
report.
here.
We are weather alert here, but for not the reason that comes with this. We will have a chance for, of course, some flash flooding, and I hope to God that it's not going to be anything extreme. Now, we did have some considerable flash flood warnings. We were talking about that earlier yesterday, but that was primarily in the central part of North Carolina. But today, it's really 2 to 9 that we're most weather alert across our area for the near term, and it's flooding, gusty winds, and lightning. I think these storms move a little bit faster than yesterday, and I showed you the map earlier. It's crazy how many severe thunderstorm warnings and flash flood warnings are around the area, but then meanwhile, Charlotte avoided pretty much all of it except for 0.05 of an inch of rain after midnight. We have some scattered showers and thunderstorms up in the mountains that first start really as early as 11, and then by about 2 o'clock, I think that you see kind of a scenario like this. This is the way it looked yesterday as well. Then they start to expand. It's usually about the mid to late afternoon, let's call it 4 to 7, that we're going to see those isolated showers turn scatters to even numerous. But I see the biggest potential with this is if it could form a line. Oftentimes, think about it, with people, we're greater in numbers. Same with storms. If they gather together and they turn into a cluster of storms, they actually can have more energy. Sometimes they can sit in place. And I think eventually you could have a few severe thunderstorm warnings that actually extend out from the front edge as they start to bow, and that primarily I think would be about 6 to 9 from south of I-85, where I think south of I-85 sees some of the strongest storms today, but doesn't mean you're not going to see it elsewhere. And then some of us are going to miss it again because there are some holes in the coverage, so it's not a guarantee. Often you might feel the outflow winds or might see off in the distance or hear the storm but not be impacted. So again, not everyone, not that widespread. As far as how much rain goes, this model even showing, hey, Charlotte's only going to see a trace again, but shows up to 2 to 3 inches elsewhere. So it's very all over the place, just like yesterday. Less than 1/10 of an inch, with some areas seeing that 2 to 3 inch extreme. As I mentioned, we do have our eastern zones that have had the worst of the weather recently. That's where we had those flood watches. And our rainfall outlook still has a moderate risk across much of the Charlotte area over off towards the east. And I truly think Anson, Stanley, and Richmond County, who are under that watch, need to be on guard because you didn't have as much rain yesterday, but you're still a little bit more saturated from the rain that we saw from Chantal. That's those areas around Greensboro that if the right rain lines up with some of the minor flooding rivers that we have from Greensboro down to Fayetteville, you could have some more at least moderate flooding that's associated with this. But the good news is it should be a little bit further from that area. As for our severe threats, gusty winds, hail, and tornadoes are not especially likely at this point. And then last but not least, for our 7-day forecast, we did drop off the weather alert for tomorrow. You still have scattered thunderstorms. We have that most days this week. Usually you have the 20% where it's more isolated. We're more scattered tomorrow afternoon, but it's not as severe, so we did remove the weather alert. Plus, we've had a lot of them this week. Got to give ourselves a break, right?
Yes.
There is a slight chance for a severe thunderstorm. We can't go weather alert every single day here during the summer because realistically, you could have a severe thunderstorm at any point. And then after that, 95 is the warmest day on Monday. Could be as much as 102, and then back to about 90 to 91. So just stay weather alert this afternoon, and just aware that those thunderstorms pop up pretty much after 2 most days over the next 7.
Chris, we appreciate you. Thank you for the for being real.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
That's the way it is.
Yeah, and you try not to bring your work home with you, but
Yeah.
as we know, the weather is about your life, and there's been a few events that have happened, and Helene was one of them, that it hits everyone hard.
Sure.
But knowing the meteorology from that, this one's a gut punch, and it's going to continue to be, because there's always going to be the what could have been done.
That is the question today.
You're a meteorologist, but you're human.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're seeing some of these reporters too, and officials, some of these grizzly bearded guys that you wouldn't expect to have tears in their eyes
Oh my gosh,
for
how
what they're
can you
going
not?
through. So, no, thanks a lot. I'm always down to be real. I'm always down to be fun, and always here to give you your weather
And
reports.
being
So I always love being
appropriate.
here.
I mean, and that's our human connection.
Mm-hmm.
So appreciate you, Chris.
Of course.
All right, it is 10:21. You're watching Live Impact News here on WCNC Plus. We thank you for spreading the word on the WCNC Plus app. That's where we get to have these conversations and discussions in a way that a regular newscast can't.